third time's the charm.
We will call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Everyone rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Alicia, can you do roll call, please?
Yep. Steve Bigelow.
Here.
Corey Miller.
Here.
Ian McDonald.
Here.
Lori Belargin.
Here.
Bruce Belargin.
Here.
Danny Erickson.
Here.
Matt Foucault.
All right, district mission, together we engage, educate, and empower all learners, bridging their passions through pathways to create a successful future and positively contribute to our local and global communities. The goals are listed below and the values. Take a moment to look at those. All right, and then whenever you're ready, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 6-0. All right, next item, public comment. Allison?
Allison Carrico, 1730, 111th Street. I'm here to address family number 16. I prayed to never have to be standing here again, sharing heartbreaking stories of current and past students, stories of bullying from both fellow students and staff, discrimination, retaliation, extortion, blackmail, police reports filed, court cases appealed, and expulsions reversed as, and I quote, "the school board did not comply with all procedural requirements," end quote. 16 families and counting have come forward to share their stories with me. To have their voices be heard, today I'd like to share with you the most recent brave soul, a graduate of 2025. Now that I'm officially 18 and in college, I think it's time I speak up. When I was 12 and in 7th grade, I transferred to Somerset Middle School. From the moment I arrived, I didn't feel welcome. I endured relentless bullying, not just the typical teasing, but the kind that breaks people. I wasn't the only one. Multiple students, including myself, reached a point where we no longer wanted to live. That's how bad it got. What was the district's response? One mental health assembly. One. That was the only time they addressed it. After it was back to silence and pretending everything was fine. High school was no better. I was already dealing with my own personal battles, which made it hard enough to show up. But walking into a building every day where students and even staff seemed to go out of their way to tear you down, that made it nearly impossible. I've seen adults in that school involve themselves in student drama and actually pick sides like they were teenagers. I've heard principals speak poorly about students and their home lives. I've witnessed discrimination based on a student's financial situation, and I've seen staff members laugh at and mock children. Yes, children. To be clear, not everyone was cruel. There were a few staff members who were genuinely kind and helped me survive school. I will always be thankful for them, but sadly they were the exception, not the rule. If you're thinking about putting your child in Somerset School District, I urge you to reconsider. The district cares more about protecting its image than protecting its students. They will overlook serious issues, bullying, discrimination, mental health crises, just to keep things looking good on paper. It's disgusting. I won't go into too much detail about my personal experience because truthfully, they were traumatic. But I will say this, the district does not care about the safety or well-being of your child, especially if they struggle with mental health. I'm not proud to be a Spartan, I'm embarrassed. Do better, Somerset School District. And to the students still struggling, I know how hard it is. Keep your head down, keep your grades up, and do whatever you need to do to walk across that stage and never look back. You're not alone. You deserve better. God bless this brave soul for sharing their truth, which may give others the strength to share theirs. And as always, I will be here to listen. I encourage anyone with similar stories to reach out. Confidentiality is my #1 priority. Let me share your truths without fear and retaliation. Your voice matters. Thank you for your time and God bless you.
Thanks, Allison. Okay. Next item is Troy, hockey co-op renewal.
Hi, I'm here for our boys and girls hockey co-op renewal. We have had a long-standing relationship with multiple schools and both boys and girls hockey. Boys in particular, we are paired up with St. Croix Falls. Girls, we're paired up with Amory, Richmond, Osceola, and ourselves. And so this is kind of you know, every 2 years have to renew, so I'm looking to do is renew us for the 26, 27, 27, 28 school years. As stated in the memo, costs are shared and divided out based upon number of players that play. Take the total cost at the end of the year, we divide it up, prorate it out depending on how many athletes are from each school. Yeah, it's pretty, like I said, we've been doing this for several years now with these schools, so nothing really has changed with it. Any questions about that?
So then does that rate change, can that fluctuate throughout the year or before the season starts? I know because we don't really have a set rate being to play hockey, doesn't matter how many kids we have, and then
Doesn't, no, what do you mean by the rate change, I guess?
like how much it costs for ice time, or if there's more kids from
No,
say,
it's
St. Croix
the-
Falls or from Somerset?
The ice time's based on just the amount of time we use it, so it doesn't matter how many kids we put on the ice. So at the end of the year, then they'll give us a bill, and we'll look at it and say, okay, Somerset had this many kids, divided it out. St. Croix Falls had this many kids.
I'm saying like if St. Croix Falls has 5 kids on the team and we have the rest of that, I mean, will we pay more per kid
Yep.
if we had?
Correct.
But I mean, like, okay. I was wondering if they had like, okay.
So the, kind of the current status, I think this is the girls, for this season, Richmond's sending us 6, Amory 1, Osceola 1, St. Croix Falls 1, and then we have the rest. So then that'll get divided out, we'll take the bulk of it still because we have the bulk of the students participating.
Okay.
And then boys, it's like 28 to 7, 28 of ours, 7 St. Croix Falls.
Okay.
Are you asking Grace if the rate, if you know what the rate is at the beginning of the year? So you have a.
Yeah, I just wondering, like,
number
if
of
we have more
what you expect it to be when you get the bill at the end?
I was wondering if we had more kids come from St. Croix, like we had, 10 in Somerset as less, than would our kids end up having to pay less per kid because it's split out between more kids? Is that also part of it? Or does that matter? Is it-
If I'm understanding you correctly, yes.
Okay. So it also depends on how many kids, because it kind of gets divvied out.
Right. I mean, obviously, the
Yes.
more we have participating divides up, but it still is, we're not putting that bill on the kids, it's still on our district. And
Right.
that, and then what St. Croix Falls, how they do it, I don't know. Like, we send them the bill and they pay us that money and they're putting it on their kids to pay it or not, I don't know that for a fact.
Okay. All right. I know we have to approve this at the next meeting, is that right?
Yeah, bring it forward,
Okay.
regular meeting.
All right.
Just real quick before I go, in case everyone's not aware, but we sent a boy to cross-country state last Saturday, placed 22nd out of 150 athletes in Division II, so that's really awesome. And then our boys soccer team is going to state, they play in Milwaukee on Friday at 11 a.m. We'll do we'll do a high school send-off at 8 a.m. on Thursday, and then they'll go to the middle school, elementary school, they walk those halls. We'll lead them out of town on our homecoming parade route with fire truck and police, and they'll be on their way. So, yeah, if you can make it out to any of that, it'd be awesome.
It's 11 a.m.
They're 11 a.m. on Friday.
Because I was on the website looking at it and I thought it said 1.
Which website?
The athletics, the calendar.
Is that the
I don't
potential,
look at those.
is that the potential time for Saturday, if they win?
Potential time Saturday is 4:30.
That's 4:30, okay, then no.
It's on there as a place, it says 1 AM for Friday. It was purchased as a
Okay.
placeholder until the game got finalized, so it just.
So that needs to be updated. So a lot of times you get a contract for those and then they send the correct times on that. Because it's state, there's nobody sending a contract, so I just need to go in and change that to 11 a.m.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, on the WIA website, it says Friday at 11, Catholic Memorial.
Yeah, 1 a.m. would be a rough drop.
Yeah.
Tough one.
I just wanna jump in here, but Troy's done a great job of putting together all sorts of information. We took that information today and put it on our high school website underneath news, so anybody that's looking for details regarding send-off tickets, t-shirts, all the different things, it's on our website there.
Our goal is to have a fan bus for the students to go as well. If we hit a certain number, that'll go. They'll leave bright and early. They will leave almost at 1.
Right.
They're leaving at 5 a.m., so bright and early, and yeah, should be a great opportunity for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. All right, Sarah, course request.
Hello. I have our course request for the spring 2026 Northwood Technical College and UWRF classes. We have fewer kids requesting to take classes off campus this coming semester. We actually only had 22 students submit applications. That's not uncommon for spring semester, as many of our students are in year-long classes. And so for them to have to change their schedule or make changes to the year-long classes, they often opt not to do that. As in prior semesters, when I come to present this information, I have the Board of Education document, which is a spreadsheet that lists all of the courses that have been requested by students. The school where it says UWRF, I linked that to their course catalog if you're curious about what these courses are and what the students are requesting to take. So we have the course name, the school in which the student is requesting to take their class, and then the number of requests that we have from our 22 students. If you look in column D, you will see that there is a checkbox next to all of the classes that Sarah Stobig and I have gone through and kind of pre-approved from our lens as we do all of the scheduling and know pretty well what our courses are at the high school, and have selected the courses that we would approve, as there is not a similar or comparable course at the high school. And then at the bottom of this document, if we scroll down, you will see a list of the courses that we would not approve, along with the Somerset High School course listed in column E, which would be the reason why we would not deny these courses, as we offer a similar or comparable course for that specific class. I was at River Falls today. We took our dual credit students, and they love our ECCP students. They're so impressed with the amount of students that we send every semester, so that's really nice feedback to hear. Our students, many of them take, significant advantage of this. We as a district can pay for up to 18 credits between Northwood as well as UWRF. And so for some of our students, this is definitely a major lifeline for them as they are preparing for college after high school, as well as getting a jump start on their college careers. Does anybody have any questions for me?
You know what class I don't see on here?
What's that?
I don't see speech.
Speech? We took care of it, Bruce. We took care of it. You'll see, yes, speech is on here because we have a comparable course now. So yes, yeah. We even ran speech over the summer. Who would have thought that kids would want to take speech during summer school? And they did. They did great. Yeah. Any questions? Okay. So you'll vote on the. Oh, yes.
How many, you said typically less in the spring, how many are in the fall?
We had 56 students apply to take courses this current semester, and I want to quote this correctly. So in the fall, we have 27 current students that are taking classes split between River Falls and Northwood. There are 17 students at Northwood Tech and 10 students at River Falls. And in the spring, 60 students submitted the application. So some students will submit the application just to see if they're able to get into classes, and then they will choose at a later date that they don't actually want to do that once they kind of figure out, like, I have to drive myself there, or they decide they'd rather take full classes in our building. So again, I anticipate with the 22 students that are requesting, not all 22 of them will actually enroll in classes. The colleges, they complete their enrollment for their current students first. So again, today I was at River Falls, and they aren't enrolling any of our high school students until December 15th. And so all of these courses are on availability only. So even if we approve them, a student might have an application that they submit, and then they're not able to take the classes they'd like to take because they're already full with River Falls current students. So we kind of get the leftovers that are opened up to high school students.
Okay. Are there online or hybrid options to make it easier? Because I know the travel is the same
Yeah,
for
yep. So UW Extension is always an option as well. And River Falls, Jamie Schneider, she's lovely and wonderful. She's our program coordinator, and she works really closely with professors. If classes are full, she will go and say, hey, we have a Somerset student that really wants to take food science, and they will typically open up one spot. So she kind of is our go-between person that will also work with our classes that are more popular, like crime, justice, law. Like that's a really popular class. Every semester it's full at River Falls. So she behind the scenes looks at the classes that students are taking, not just from our district, but from all of the district areas. And she will proactively reserve seats too for River Falls students. So they really truly do as much as they can to get our students in there, which I really appreciate. She was just telling me today that companion animals, intro to animal science, food science, and then there was one other one that historically students are not able to get into. She has reserved spots for ECCP students. So they work really, really closely. It really is an issue at at River Falls, not so much Northwood. Northwood tends to have space for our students. But River Falls, I think because they're pulling in students from so many other, districts in our area. And then worst case scenario, to directly answer your question, UW Extension is where students will go for fully online classes. If a class at River Falls they're not able to take, then we get referred to UW Extension, and then they can take them online. So there's lots of pathways to go to get kids in classes. It's a really big puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else for Sarah?
Great.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
All right, district, department, and school goals.
All right. Yep, so I'll start this off, and fair warning, it's gonna be a long one. There's a lot of information here. The good news is I won't be doing the majority of the talking, so you're welcome in advance. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna start out by talking about the format and how this was developed. Then we're gonna turn it over to the directors. So first Sarah and Jesse, and then Rod, and then each principal will be talking about the goals at their levels, and then I will close with the district and board level goals that really are the beginning of the conversation, but just for the flow of the presentation, we thought it made most sense to save that for the end. So first, this very first tab, and if you're following along on your computer, we're gonna follow right in the order of the tabs on the bottom. So this first one is just the template with the annotation. This is all an extension of really good work that was already in place with the goal setting. I think one of the best parts of the existing goal setting structure were the 90-day plan. So we've kept that intact because it's a really good responsive way to make sure that we're looking at student data and the information that's coming in, and we're responsive, and we don't just have a plan that we set out at the beginning of the year and say, go, without adjustment. So the 90-day plan really allows for that responsive work. So that is linked in there as well. But the rest of the structure, a lot of this existed. We're just trying to consolidate it and get it in one place so everyone can see the linkage and the strategic connections between all of the elements. So following this format, what you'll see is the very first, they're numbered in order. So number 1, long-term goal and vision. That's where we establish where we want to be long-term. It's not an annual goal, it's a long-term goal. When we're looking at student learning data, we use the high-performing comps and a formula that I'll explain in a little bit. What that does, it allows us to ensure that the goals we set aren't impacted negatively or in a confusing way if the state changes their practices. If they change the assessment or they change cut scores, we're using a structure here that will allow us to be consistent and always measure against other districts and make sure that our performance or our improvements that we're seeing are real, or if we slip, that we know that slip is something that needs to be addressed. So that's the long-term goal. Follow a typical SMART goal process. I'll explain the formula as we get into that a little bit more. Now, going just to the left of that, because it's a higher level goal, is the strategic plan. What's that connection to the strategic plan? We want to make sure that we're not picking goals that aren't aligned to what we've already agreed as a district are the important things. So we have that strategic plan connection illustrated there. Then we're going to go into the next 4 sections. Those are our quarterly objectives. Those are the things we plan to implement or do that we feel will move us in the right direction. They're not the overall goal, and they're not necessarily all measurable other than we say we're going to do it, and we're going to do it, and we're going to show the evidence that we followed through and completed whatever those tasks were. But they're all aligned to what we believe will move us in the right direction. We have 3 of those. They follow the 90-day plan cycle. And then the 4th one are the summer priorities. So what are we going to do during the summer to make sure we're ready for the next year? All of this, typically, we'd be bringing to you much earlier. But because there was so much transition happening, we're a little bit later than we typically would be. Typically what will happen is we'll establish those board level, district level goals first. We bring them to the board ultimately for your consideration and then approval. And then the rest of the goal setting structure would cascade from there. But then we get into that gray section to the right. Those are the metrics. Those 3 boxes. The first one is the baseline. So we set our goal, but what were the results previously? So in this case, the 24-25 baseline. That's what goes in that first box. The next one would be our annual target. So we know our long-term goal, but what's our 1-year target? We'll talk about that formula that we use to calculate that in just a bit. And then finally, the results, which obviously wouldn't be there till the end of the year. So that's how we read that form going through. And then Alicia, if you want to scroll down to the bottom of that document, there's some supporting information here. So first of all, there's 4 tables there, a district level and then elementary, middle, and high school level. Those are the high-performing comps we've talked about. As a reminder, when we established those high-performing comps, we looked at districts throughout the state that were similarly situated. We looked at districts that had enrollment that was plus or minus 500 students from where we were. And then the reason we do that, the reason district size is important is because we're not only looking at those districts for results, but we're looking at them for the why and the how. And we have similarly sized districts, they're going to have similar resources. So we can say, oh, we can see that Oostburg, as an example, high-performing district. What are they doing to achieve those results? We can reach out, we can start to develop relationships and use those as benchmark districts. But what you see here are percentile rankings. This is where we're allowed to have comparisons that hold true over time. What we have here are it started with about 32, I think, districts that were similarly sized and then similar in economic conditions. So we did plus or minus 10% on free and reduced rates. Then we took off the lowest performing districts of those and left 20 total districts. Those are our high performing comps. They're ranked here by achievement, but we can also rank them by math achievement specifically or by reading or ELA achievement. At each level then, the principals will use that data to establish their long-term goals that are linked directly to academics. So if you can scroll down to the images at the bottom there. So first we see that those four rectangles. That's just an example of how we use the quartiles. So we take those 20 districts, we rank them by whatever we're looking at. If we're looking at math, we'd rank them by math achievement. Our goal is to be achieving in that top quartile. So in this case, in the top 5 of those districts that we've marked. Then we compare that to the percentile. So as an example, the way we would read our goal, we would want, say, 65% of our students to be meeting or advanced on the forward exam in mathematics, which would place us at the, say, 91st percentile. That percentile is statewide. That's not a percentile based on those high-performing comps. That's in the entire state. So when we set these goals, ultimately we know they're lofty, we know they're rigorous goals because we're comparing them across the state. That graph, the line graph there, all that is about, that's the formula that we use. So when we have that long-term goal and we have our reality, we look at the difference. So let's say that long-term goal is 70% and we're operating at 60%. We have a 10-point difference. We would split the difference and either round up or add 1 to the annual goal. That allows us to close that gap. You can see the way that line graph is going. That blue line would be that long-term goal because we set it, that's stable. We set it where we want to be. And then over time, that current reality, we creep up until eventually we meet that long-term goal. When we do that, we would lock that in. Obviously, our highest priorities will always be student achievement. We'll always be looking at English, language arts, and math as our top priorities. But all the other stuff that we do helps support that and move us in the right direction. So that's the format. At the end of the presentation, I'll come back and I will share how this translates to the district level goals. But for now, I'm going to turn it over first to Sarah to talk about the goals in the curriculum instruction and assessment department.
All right, good evening. All right, so if you want to tab over to the CIA/Pupil Services, Jesse and I are going to go kind of back and forth because we have the same strategic plan connection. We have 3 different goals, one focused on ELA, one focused on math, and then we have a slightly different one for our 3rd goal each. So if you take a look at the top line under goal 1, that's our ELA goal, which connects to both staff and students in our strategic plan. Obviously, we want our students getting that personalized learning where they're achieving at high levels, and we want to be sure that we have our staff properly trained, prepared, and ready to do that great work. So our long-term vision for ELA, English Language Arts, that's measured by our Wisconsin Student Assessment System. If you remember, and if you don't, that's fine, I can tell you. That includes our Wisconsin Forward exam, which all kids grades 3 through 8 take. It includes the pre-ACT Secure, which our 9th and 10th graders take, and it's the ACT, which our juniors take. So the state takes all of the data from English Language Arts and combines it all together, and then we get an overall proficiency score for all kids grades 3 through 8. So our long-term vision is that we will have 65% of our students to demonstrate proficiency in grades 3 through 8 as measured through those measures I just talked about, which would then place us at the 90th percentile throughout the state of Wisconsin, okay, like Dave had said. Our baseline, if you pop over to the metrics all the way to the right, and then I'll kind of work my way backwards there. Currently, based on our 23-24 state report card, which did come out a year ago now, so we are going to be getting, we've seen it, they're not public yet, but once they become public, then we can talk about what our 24-25 report card looks like. We had 59% of our students in grades 3 through 11 that were proficient on all the state assessments. So we split the difference, and so for this year, our goal is to hit 62% of all students in grades 3 through 11 to demonstrate proficiency on the ELA portion of our Wisconsin State Assessment System. So in order to do that, currently right now, I am, if you want to go over back to where cycle 1 is, we're reviewing report cards with all the principals. We've done so as an administrative team. I've done so in my weekly meetings with the principals, and we're looking for those trends over time. Where are spaces where we've done really well? Where are some spaces where we can continue to improve? So we're reviewing those right now. I'm also working with Pam and Mindy at the elementary school. Mindy is going to do an audit of kind of our ELA blocks to look at how we're using our time, what's happening during those times in order to coach them. That will be the plan throughout the course of this year. So then cycle 2, after our first 90 days, which is kind of coming up here at the end of November already, going to work on a plan of action with the principals on their ELA goals. Each building has an ELA goal, so we want to be sure that we're working together to offer support, any training that might be needed. If we need to look at the structure of what's happening in classrooms or anything like that, we're going to work on that together. And then for cycle 3, continue that work with principals in our professional learning communities, leaders and themselves, those that are teaching the class, to create some must-do and may-do lists for StudySync, which is our English Language Arts resource, and at the secondary level, and MyView, which is our elementary English Language Arts resource. And those are some pieces that we want to make sure we put in place so that we have a lot of clarity as far as when we have a new teacher coming or we have something going on, we want to make sure that these are the things that you must do within your classroom in order to support student learning. Here's where you have some flexibility. So just to provide some more clarity. And then in June, we're going to review our data because good news, we do get our data from all of our state assessments now before the end of May, which never was the case before. We usually had to wait until the middle of July before we would get results. So now we see them then. We have a day already on our calendar where we'll be able to go through the data with our staff so we can look at end of year data with the kids that are currently with us, and see how we landed. So that is our ELA goal for this year as far as from a district standpoint. You're gonna hear something a little bit different from each of the buildings. Questions on that before I turn it over to Jessie? Okay, Jessie, you're up.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so like Sarah said, we are talking district-wide for these specific goals for our kind of programs. My goal with the pupil services is really looking at the subset of students for students with disabilities. And it's a little bit different than what you will hear from all of the buildings and even with Sarah, because I'm really focusing on the mean student growth percentiles. So really the goal, the long-term goal is that our students with disabilities will show growth that either matches or exceeds students without disabilities for ELA, or at least being at that 50th percentile. So that's kind of the long-term goal. And then if you go over to kind of looking at some of that baseline data, I just included for, this was the mean student growth percentile for the 24-25 data. And so then I'll be looking at kind of for the metrics, the 25-26 data. But you can see students with disabilities, they were scoring at 22.7% proficient. And so they had a 44.1 mean student growth percentile. So that is kind of overall from kind of comparing from one year to the next, how much they were growing. Where students without disabilities, they had the 69.8% proficient, and then their mean student growth percentile was 51.9. So again, a little bit different, but we're looking at kind of from year to year, how much are they growing in these specific areas for ELA. So kind of looking at those action steps, kind of first quartile, what we're really focusing on is looking at what specific interventions, so what different programs, kind of what we are using to address that specialized learning. So the students that have, ELA goals in their IEPs, those individualized education plans, what are we specifically learning? So really just reviewing kind of the different programs. We know kind of specifics, but really tapping in at each building level. We're using Read Live, or we're using Achieve 3000. So looking at kind of that overall review of what we're specifically using. Then that next step is really looking at more of the specific data. So students with IEPs, right, we report grades out either at the trimester or at the semester at the high school. So anytime we report grades out to families, we also have to send progress reports out for the students that have those individualized education plans, how they're doing on those goals related to that specialized instruction. So really looking and targeting at those ELA goals, reviewing if they were making progress on those IEP goals. And then if they were not making progress, again, it's a whole form that we have to send out, what is changing within their specialized instruction to be responsive to that data. So that will be kind of that next step. That third step is looking at really and trying to develop a system of ensuring that the specialized instruction that we're saying is happening in the IEP, that it's happening with the fidelity. So really developing a system to track if that intervention, it wasn't able to happen, how much time or how much the students' specialized learning was happening with fidelity. Because there's things that happen. There's things that can come up, right? We've got different behaviors that were being addressed. We've got attendance rates that can be impacted. We've got different time periods where students might be having to be pulled for something else. So really working on developing a very specific system to monitor that fidelity of what the interventions that are happening, which then leads into our summer work. Like Sarah talked about, really looking at that June data review of kind of, okay, how do we do with this? Knowing that behaviors can kind of take away from some of that intervention fidelity, that professional learning for the summer really want to work on increasing some of the pro-social behaviors. So that's going to be the focus of the summer work. Questions?
Quick question to
Yeah.
clarify. So when you have an example of like students with disability, 28% proficient, 41.2 mean student growth percentile, student without disability, 69.3% proficient. Those are percentages of the whole of that subset. So it's 20%, 28.8%
Of the students with
of
disabilities.
all the students that are
Yep.
classified as with disability.
Correct. Yes.
And not, those aren't percentages of a whole.
No,
Those
no.
are kind of
Yep.
both.
Yeah, good for.
Percentages of the subset.
Yep.
Yep.
Mhm. Great. All right, so scroll, sorry, other question?
I'm statistically trying to imagine how you guys got like, there's a lot here, and I really appreciate how much work it is. Like, is there any more explanation of like the past and like, okay, what were the main drivers to say, let's just pick a number that's a decent like step up, and for these like just they seem like very difficult numbers to. I can imagine the long meetings and discussions that went on, so.
Yeah, so I'll take that one, because they're different depending on what we're looking at. With achievement, we're always looking at those high-performing comps. That's how we set anything related to achievement, it's always looking at the high-performing comps. Growth is different. Growth, so when we look at a student with a disability, we would expect that they make more than what is average growth, because they're having extra resources that are designed to increase the rate of growth. So that's why when Jesse has that goal, the way it's stated, we want them to grow at the same rate as students without disabilities at least, or at the 50th percentile. Meaning, if we have a year where growth is low for students without disabilities, we're not going to lower the bar for students with disabilities. We want them to grow at least at the 50th percentile, meaning they're making, at the 50th percentile, that would equate to a year's growth on average compared to this other students in the state.
Okay, that helps a lot, thank you.
Okay, well, if you scroll down, you can see goal number 2. This is our math goal, same strategic plan areas. So our long-term vision for math as a district is that 71% of our students will demonstrate proficiency as measured by our assessment system. It is the same exams for grades 3 through 11 as I already described. There's just the math section on there. That would then put us at the 91st percentile throughout the state. And so currently, our baseline for this year as a district, 63% of our students demonstrated proficiency on the math exams in grades 3 through 11. And so our target for this year is, that, again, splitting that difference, is to hit 67% of students to demonstrate proficiency on those exams from 3rd through 7th, which is, again, going to put us at the 87th percentile for the state for this year. So we would be moving up and getting closer to that 91st. And so you're going to see some similarities between the ELA goal as well. I'm not going to, change everything because we're dealing with a different subject area. But again, spent time reviewing report cards with the principals and looking at growth over time. We're also looking at our resources and the supporting resource use that we are utilizing. For example, at the elementary school, I'm not going to steal your thunder, Pam, don't worry. But we did, we know we had a new resource last year, and so one of the spaces that we we're looking at to increase is math fluency, fact fluency, and so we're looking at some different supporting resources and trying some different supporting resources. And we've already started that work to hopefully help our students achieve better and grow. And then cycle 2, we'll work a plan with all the principals in the buildings to look at that training, any additional support that they need, and work on that structure for instruction, like what should it look like. We're at a really good point to be able to do that. Then in cycle 3 to create those must-do and may-do lists. Obviously it'll look different in math than it does in ELA, but just again, what are we going to guarantee that all of our kids are going to get when they're in an elementary math classroom, a middle school math classroom, and a high school math classroom. And that will do that for SAVAS, which is our math resource for grades 5 through 12, and then Math Expressions, which is our JK to 4 math resource. And then again, in early June, we'll be able to look at that data review and then craft professional learning over the summer based on some goals that we will set based on how we did this year.
Questions? Okay. I will dive in for my math goal. Again, it pretty much mirrors the ELA goal. That same subgroup of students with disabilities, right? So these, right, you could be identified for a student with a disability in reading and not math. So these are just focused with the students with disabilities in the math. And that they would either, match or exceed that for students without disabilities, or at least being at that 50th percentile. So you can see that baseline data that we have, right? So that Students with disabilities coming out at 20.8% proficient, that mean student growth 41.2, and then compared to the students without disabilities, the 69.3, and then the 47.5, the mean student growth for students without disabilities. So target for this year is really just going, students with disabilities would grow from the 41.2 up to the 44.3 for that mean student growth percentile. And then just going through that same process, reviewing the interventions used to address the special aids instruction in math, reviewing those progress reports, identifying, what has changed if the students were not making that progress that we were expecting them to make at each of those time periods, looking at and developing a system to track how that math intervention time is happening with Fidelity, and then that June work, really looking at that data review, okay, so how did we do? And then what can we do to increase those pro-social behaviors that could be impacting that math intervention fidelity? Questions? Thanks.
All right, then goal 3 is a little bit different. They both have to do with both our staff and then also community. Mine has a different lens than what Jesse's has. And so the long-term goal that when I took this position, this was a long-term goal then, it hasn't changed. And so I want to work to develop systems to provide clarity in our teaching and learning processes. What does it look like from beginning to end as we're building a vision, adopting a resource, implementing that resource, and making sure that we're supporting our staff as that implementation takes place. Oftentimes it's that implementation where we aren't so great. And so I want to make sure that that's one of the pieces that we're doing. So there is currently not a baseline for this, so it's just kind of something that I'm working on and working on with folks. Dave's been a big help so far as well. So this first cycle, I am reading, researching, synthesizing all kinds of information about a curriculum improvement process. Taking what other districts have done, looking at the research that's out there, and how can we apply it and make it useful for us here in Somerset. So then this winter, I will do some initial drafting and starting to build that process and focus on 3 specific kind of areas. So I'm going to look at high school math and ELA, middle school ELA, and elementary school math. I already have goals set on those spaces, so those are the areas that I'm really going to focus on this year. And then once we get that process going for what it will look like, then I'll be able to start replicating that in some of the other core areas as well. And then cycle 3, I will continue the drafting process, working with principals, working with Dave, and the intent then will be to share this work with the leadership cohort and PLC leaders over the summer. Because what might be clear to me and to those of us that work within education may not be clear to those that are not here every single day working with kids. And so then next summer, I do want to share it to get feedback. Where did we achieve clarity? Where's clarity lacking? So that we have a clear process so folks understand here's how we go from the beginning all the way through implementation. And so my target then for the end of this year is to develop that preliminary curriculum improvement process. It will not be finalized. So I can share it with staff in the community. So we have an adoption process, implementation process, what kind of professional learning support, and then some of those must do and may do for ELA and math. So taking some of that real specific work of my first 2 goals and then putting it into kind of an overall process.
So question, so when it comes to curriculum clarity, are we talking about for staff to understand from beginning to end how to achieve these goals with the curriculums, or am I off base?
Nope, that's part of it.
Okay.
And then the other part is to have the community also understand that when a curriculum cycle is up, what does that look like for us? What's the process look like as far as going through researching if we're going to change curriculums, if we're going to change resources, what will that look like for once we do that and we go through the process, if it's something new, you guys know comes to the board. And then beyond that, yes, it is the training of staff and making sure that we're supporting their work with it, because the greatest curriculum and resource in the world won't do any good if we're not supporting their learning along the way as well. Thanks.
Okay, going into my last goal, again, under that pupil service umbrella, looking at kind of lots of different areas here. but really focusing on the climate, culture, and belonging surveys for the data. So really the goal that we want to work on is increasing the percentage of students who feel safe at school and who have a trusted adult by 3%. So if you go over to that baseline data, there's a lot of numbers in that little box there, but I broke it down for each building. So we can look at, so just the question is, I feel safe at school. So at the elementary school, we had 94%. Middle school survey was a little bit different, so I wanted to provide some clarity here because they gave 3 options where the other 2 buildings only gave 2. So they had I always feel safe at school or most of the time. When I combined those 2 percentage, either always or most of the time, it was up to like 99%. So I wanted to, again, I think it's still, so majority of the students are feeling safe at school, but really trying to pinpoint, they're not much lower than the other when we're taking all of that in. So I just want to provide a little clarity with that. And then high school, 95% of the time. For, I feel I have a trusted adult or connected to my teachers, or my teachers care about me. Again, elementary school, 97% of students, middle school, 73, again, 3 options for there, and then high school, 94%. So, goal for the end of this year is that students will show an increase in 3% on that climate, culture, and belonging survey there. Things that we want to do to address that, again, we're reviewing and looking at that data from the climate, culture, and belonging survey. We also administered the My Savers data, so that kind of gives a baseline for our students of how they are rating themselves in that social, academic, emotional, and behavioral ratings. So that's kind of just that first quarter is really just working with, looking at all that survey data, working with the school counselors to kind of look at that survey data as well. That next step, right, because then we have this data and what do we want to do with it, right? So what's our purpose? What do we want to do to address some of that? Working with basically trying to create some type of exit ticket. I'm going to be working with any really staff members, but it'll mostly be focused with the school counselors. For students that are reporting bullying or harassment, that they feel some type of resolution in the process, right? So if they are working through this with a school counselor, if they're working through it with a school psychologist, one of our behavior interventionists, so any staff that's kind of going through that, creating an exit ticket that would be able to kind of basically report how did this process go? Do I feel like there's a resolution? Do I need more follow-up? Do I feel like I need some additional resources, but some different options? So that next kind of quarter is going to be really focused on what that can look like, what information we're going to need to do for follow-ups if we need to. Another step is rolling out the Speak Up, Speak Out. So that is an app, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's got the different QR codes, basically where you can make any type of anonymous reporting. Sometimes you need additional follow-up and it might become unanonymous if they want to disclose that. But really working as a district to get that out to students, staff, and community. So there's a lot of different things that can be supported in that way, and bullying and harassment can also, we can get some of those anonymous reports that way. So again, just working to roll that out district-wide. And then developing plans, again, kind of working with our people service team for the students that were showing to be at risk on that My Savers. So, we can look at it, who's coming out at risk, what plans, what supports do we already have in place, and then do we need to increase any of those supports or provide additional resources. And then that last quarter, again, we screen students for a second time. So again, being responsive to the data, the plans that we put in place, did the students make progress? If they're not making progress, kind of what's our next step for resources that we would need to implement for that? And then some summer work is really looking at and developing a very systematic process to have a simplified way of kind of explaining this whole process to so students and families that are going through some type of these situations can understand, right? If I'm feeling like I am being a victim of bullying or harassment or other behavioral challenges, who are we reporting to? Who do we feel like if we're not finding a resolution, kind of some type of simplified way to explain the whole process.
I appreciate your focus on that. I mean, it's obviously very important. And then as far as how it's changing going forward versus in the past. Tell me a little bit about the differences.
Tell me more. Would you?
Yeah, so as far as, you know, follow-up and that type of thing, when there's a concern, a family concern.
Yeah, and that's kind of,
student.
yeah, so that will be the focus of kind of creating those exit
Creating it.
tickets.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the kind of first step of like, you know, we kind of talk through, you know, we've got a lot of things in place in front, some of this prevention, and then also kind of what our responses are, you know, so we have a lot of those things. I think we have to take it to that next level of making sure and ensuring that the students that are feeling this, that we have some type of resolution, and if they don't, then what's our next step? So I don't think we have that piece, and that's
Right.
kind of the next layer of that.
Appreciate that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So there's two pieces in there too that I think that the exit ticket I think will be great, and the speak up, speak out too, just a few comments on that. So that's funded through the state. It's free and available, not free, but we don't have to pay extra. It's funded through the state. We have access to it. It's a wonderful resource because what it allows, originally it was designed for school safety. So if there is something that someone sees or hears, they can call, anonymously report, and there's follow-up that takes place, and it works. I mean, they get a hold of us. We just had one, the elementary level, and it wasn't actually our school. It was a different school in a different district, but similar name. But they made sure that we closed that ticket. But it also works, as Jesse's explaining, for things like bullying and harassment. So for whatever reason you have a student that doesn't feel comfortable going to someone in the school, they can still do this, it's still available. Jesse will be putting together a campaign so everyone is aware of this resource. It's nice because it is supported 24/7. So there's always someone that can go, someone that can hear. So a great resource for the state, and we're gonna certainly leverage that for our kids. Another thing I wanted to mention of the work that Sarah and Jesse are doing, they're not on a combined tab here because they don't have a lot to do. They are both amazingly busy and do a ton of work, but their work combined is the heart of what's important in the district. It's about serving our students. Sarah focusing on what do all kids need generally in the core, and then Jesse focusing on what do subgroups of students need to make sure that they have what they need to be successful. And we want that visually to be together because we want to make sure that we're not sending a message that any student is an afterthought, that we think about all students up front proactively, and that's what these plans represent. So they've done really, really good work on this.
And then just big picture, Dave, I'm guessing you're meeting however often with each, or these 90-day cycles you're meeting, and then we'll have a review of
Yes.
something we'll probably go through later.
Exactly, so yeah, you'll receive 90-day reviews, and what we'll talk about are those actions that we said we're gonna do. Sometimes there'll be corresponding data, other times it's just gonna be, these are, we look at all the departments and all the schools, these are the things we said we're gonna do, we'll report out on that, tell you how it went and what we learned. And then I'm meeting with everyone, at least every other week, and then this is part of what we're discussing.
I have a question about the screening. So that means like kids that were reported or involved in a report, there's just a plan of follow-up then to kind of check in on how they're doing? Is that what that means, or?
So the screening for students the second time? Is that
Yeah.
what you're, yep, so we administer the My Savers in the fall and the spring.
Oh,
For all students unless families decide to opt out for that. Yep, so that is just, basically, we're gonna screen them a second time, we do that for all students. And then we can compare the students that were at risk in the fall and how they're rating themselves now in the spring.
I get you.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have to ask, when it comes to methods of dealing with bullying and behavior issues, I know we've had a lot of presentations over the years about restorative practices. It took me a while to really understand it, and I'm sure like anything, there's a million interpretations and applications of it. To what degree is that being applied, or is it like partially, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, restorative practices are a key component in one way that we use to address, different type of behavioral situations that come up. But there is also, very just more typical consequences that also could be applied. So I would say nothing has changed in terms of like, in each of the buildings, we have different restorative practices that are intertwined in our just day-to-day practices.
Okay.
So I don't know how much more
Sure,
specific,
well, yeah.
yeah, but I would say it's twofold, you know, it's not, if we're using a restorative practice, there also might be more of a typical, you know, consequence like a suspension or, you know, different kind of expulsions that we would have to go to as well. So it's not, we're using this, we also might have to use this depending on the situation.
Sure.
The other thing, and Jesse and I just talked about this the other day, if we engage in restorative practices, the accuser or the victim has to agree that that's part of the process and part of the resolution. It's not something like if a kid says, I really don't want to deal with that, they don't have to. It's only if they agree that they want to be part of that process.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so we're gonna shift to Rod in business services, and this takes quite a drastic shift because the metrics he is using aren't the same. He's not, you know, his success isn't measured by student learning results. Doesn't mean it's any less important. You've heard from Rod a lot, and you know how much he's doing to support all the work that happens. There's nothing that happens in the district that doesn't require operations, funding, all the support to make sure it happens. Rod did a really good job of creating goals that make sense and support all the work that's happening both in the other departments and the schools. With that, turn it over to Rod.
So my first goal is related to staff as part of the strategic plan. My goal is to have a compensation plan ready and communicated to staff by the end of the school year. That's in contrast to, we just passed a compensation plan for last board meeting. And are just rolling out the new pay increases and retros on this upcoming payroll. Some of the reasons we want to do that is we want to help with staff retention and recruitment. It's much more efficient in the business office, not to have to issue contracts twice, not to have to do the retros and all that kind of work. And we want to be more in line with the practices of the surrounding school districts and kind of the state as a whole. It's seen as the best business practice to have your contracts and compensation plan up and running by the end of the school year so that staff know what to expect in the upcoming year. And how I plan to do that is in January and March, I'd like to come to the board meeting, discuss the preliminary budgets at that time, give you guys some more information. And also in probably January, February, or March, we want to meet with each of the employee groups, talk to them, get their vision for what compensation plan might look like, get some ideas from them. I think their input would be very valuable instead of just assuming that we know what they want to do. The third step is to come back to the board in around April or May and hopefully approve a compensation plan at that point, and then roll that out to the staff so that they know exactly what's going on. And have contracts issued by the time that they leave at the end of the school year. And then over the summer, we want to be able to communicate that to the staff and then update all the payroll wages, and then we hopefully shouldn't have to do any retros at that point like we have in the past. And that's about it for that goal, unless you guys have any questions. Okay. And the second goal, you guys have heard, Dave and I talked about this one a little bit. It has to do with operations and building a long-term maintenance schedule to prioritize the high maintenance needs and build this maintenance schedule for routine items that need to be done in a timely fashion in order to support an operational excellence. The first step in that is we meeting with Dave and Dean, trying to prioritize what maintenance needs to be done. We're working also with a vendor to give us a better idea of what they think needs to be done. They already have a lot of plans in place since we've been working with them. And we need to look for areas in the budget where we can find a little bit of money to hopefully work on some of this stuff, or set up that Fund 46 that we've talked about, which is considered a long-term capital improvement trust fund. And I think it's kind of my belief that maintenance in modern facilities is very key to again, staff retention and recruitment. Staff want to work in nice buildings, don't have leaky ceilings, deteriorating buildings. And it's same thing for enrollment. Parents don't want to come into a building and see things that need to be fixed, and they want their kids in a safe building. And I think the community wants to have pride in their buildings as well. They come in for a sporting event or graduation, they want to see the buildings looking nice and in shape. I also think it leads to staff, students, parents, and community. They all want these facilities that they can be proud of. And for Somerset, smaller district, the school district is a big part of the community, and I think we want to make sure that our buildings are up to date. I think that allows the staff, the students to thrive when facilities are in good shape. Any questions on that?
Yeah, if you put money in a Fund 46, it has to sit there for 5 years.
5 years, yes.
Is that interest bearing?
Yes.
Just a comment, I'm like glad to see that on there because, yeah, I think that not only is it nice to have nice buildings, it does save money if done right, so.
It's sometimes,
Yeah.
we've never had a facility plan in place in the time I've been here. It's always been a react to whatever comes up, so,
Yep.
we're looking to change that.
Very good.
And the last goal has to do with community. I want to provide educational and financial statements and financial reports out on the website so that anybody that wants to review the condition of the district, they can look at that at any point that they want to. My first step in that is kind of analyzing what's currently out there on the website. The next step is to look at other districts, kind of see what they have out there, get some ideas of what looks good and what maybe doesn't. And then pull all the information together. It's a lot of stuff that's formatted that will look great on the website. And then over the summertime, I want to get all that information up on the website so it's ready to go. Kind of in my initial review of our business services website, my predecessor did a pretty good job. There's a lot of information out there. And I want to kind of improve on that, find better ways to get the information out there for anybody who's interested in it. And I think it's important to get that information to be out there, to be up front, and give them information and not look like we're trying to hide information from them. That's all I've had on that one, unless you guys have any questions.
Well, that's excellent. Appreciate the forward vision and staying ahead of the game when it comes to the facilities and transparency.
Thank you.
Couple comments before we turn it over to the principals and their work that happens at the schools. You'll notice some of these goals, they don't have baselines, they're new, and you'll see that in the district level goals, you'll see some of that at the school level goals too, but we thought it's important still to address those issues and then establish the baseline, so we'll close the year that way. Also, as Rod mentioned, a lot of this is just extension of really good work that's happened in the past, and you'll see that at the school levels too. When we get into the school levels, you're gonna see that they will all have an ELA or reading goal, and they will all have a math goal as well, because until we're at that level, that long-term vision, we're gonna keep that focus. The 90-day plans are something that I did not mention specifically on that first tab that sort of laid out the overall plan. The 90-day plans exist as they have in the past. The principals and their leadership teams have actually already developed that first 90-day plan. They did that work in the summer. It's super solid. It is only linked though to the goals they had established before we put this process in place. So at some of the schools, there's one 90-day plan that's very, very specific. At one of the schools, there's two 90-day plans because their leadership team was addressing two different areas. That's gonna be their primary goal. It doesn't mean the other goals aren't as important. That's just the one that will have the direct support from their leadership team. As this process evolves and we roll into next year, that likely will look different, but that's the way it looks this year. We didn't want to upend the good work that was happening at the schools because there's some really solid stuff in place. And as I mentioned earlier, the 90-day plans I think are a keys or a cornerstone of what makes this work. Because when you have teacher leaders engaged in this process and they're able to look at the information they get in their classroom and then respond and suggest improvements, that's how we make sure we kind of keep the motor moving in the right direction. But with that, turn it over to Pam.
Hi everyone, we're in tab number 4 for the elementary school. Starting first with my ELA or reading goal. If you look at the strategic plan connection, that is performance task assessment, measured growth, mastery of content. Our long-term goal is to be at 70% of students demonstrating proficiency as measured by the Wisconsin Forward. And we remember that only 3rd and 4th graders in our building take that, but this is all of our goal and we all work on this together. That would put us at the 85th percentile across the state. Going over to row or column G, our baseline is from 23-24 is 66% of our students were assessed in the forward we're meeting or advanced in ELA. So what is our target for this year? We want to get to 68% of our students, which would put us at the 82nd percentile. But you'll also see below that, and this is where Dr. Grambo was talking about our building goal or our 90-day plan goal. We've made a goal, you've heard us talk a lot about Act 20, reading plans, a lot of things that are layered into the work of Act 20, and one of the biggest things that has been a big part of us at the elementary school are those personalized reading plans. So at the elementary school, we have set a goal that we want to reduce the number of personalized reading plans in our building by 10%. And we've also tweaked it a little bit to really trying to get more kids involved. You know, right now it's 25th percentile by what the law says. We've upped it to 30th percentile. We want to get kids above that 30th percentile and reduce the reading plans. So going over to cycle 1, you've heard me talk about the top 10 tools. We all got through the top 10 tools, but we're going back to tool number 7, which is fluency. Personalized reading plans are really based a lot on how kids do in fluency, or that idea of reading at the speed of sight, right? How quickly and how fluent are our students. So we've continued, or we're continuing our work with fluency and our professional learning around fluency. Using tool number 7, we also are doing a book study as a staff, so that staff are really going to examine their practices in fluency, what does it look like in the various grade levels, and then in their personal or in their collaborative teams, they're going to be doing some commitment to trying some new evidence-based fluency strategies that are different than things that we've had in place before. In the second cycle, once they've developed those resources, they're going to really identify 3 to 5 that are really working. They're going to go through a process of giving them a try, bringing that data back to their teams, and seeing what's working, what needs tweaking, and what is our data showing us. And then if you remember me speaking last year about we did something called Circle the Sage, where staff members learned from each other. The professional learning was colleague to colleague, and colleagues shared what they had done at their grade levels with each other, and everybody was able to see, this worked, might I be able to do it in my grade level? Really working around that collaboration and how do we raise that level of fluency and reduce personalized reading plans. Another big part of Act 20 is we need to have identified summer interventions. So our summer work, working with Mindy Shoup and working with Lindsay Thomas, what is summer going to look like for students that are on reading plans? How are we going to offer them continued learning? What are we going to do to get parents on board and wanting to be a part of that? And then also really taking a look at the Act 20 assessments, what was effective with them. We kind of have several assessment systems happening because we have the Act 20 systems, we still have FastBridge systems in place, and we have the forward exams. So we're kind of looking at all 3. What is the data telling us about what we're doing right and what's working at the elementary? Questions about ELA? So moving down to math, if you remember from last year, we were really excited to roll out a new math curriculum. We adopted math expressions, so we are now in our 2nd year of math expressions. One thing that Sarah alluded to that I'm super excited about, and you heard me talk about it, we did not have an implementation dip in math this last year. We're still not where we want to be, but we didn't drop, and so we're really happy about that. Our long-term goal is that we will be at 79% of our students proficient, which would put us in the 92nd percentile across the state. Our current baseline is 63% of our students there. And then our goal by the end of this year is getting to 72%, which would put us at the 83rd percentile across the state. So some things we learned, we aren't happy again with fluency, that idea of how fast are we doing things, but fluency in math has a lot of different meanings, and what does that look like, and accuracy, and really studying fluency in math. And so we've adopted a new resource called the Math Fact Lab in grades 2 through 4, and we're really seeing some good results. It's a program where students take, they can either do it in adding and subtracting or multiplying and dividing. It's a 6-second fluency, they do 12 minutes a day, and it helps identify their strengths, what they need to work on. It really aligns beautifully to math expressions, and helps give teachers a really look at what's happening and what kids need in math. And then also, speaking of needing in math, we're still looking at, well, what do our teachers need for that second year with math expressions? So Sarah and I have done surveys, we've talked to them about what are your professional learning needs. And so in my cycle 2, just really seeing what they need and giving them what they need. And in my cycle 3, I really want to see teachers getting into each other's classrooms and seeing what's happening and the really good things that are happening in math and the really big successes people are having in math, and really learning from each other, because I really do believe there's some really talented teachers, and just like ELA, we can learn from each other. We have the resources we need, we just need to learn from each other. Questions about math? Oh, also in summer, we need to get some math interventions going too in summer. Getting some offerings. We have really great enrichment programs, but really getting some things out there for our kiddos that need to work on math in the summer too.
What would those look like?
That's a great-
Something you find and you send it back, 'cause obviously it's kind of on the
I'd
parents,
love
which
to
I'm all
see it,
for.
I'd love to see it kind of integrated into like a class, like where they could do, I've seen really cool like summer classes where like maybe they're baseball themed and they're doing stats and runs, and so kids are excited and learning about baseball, but they're also getting math in there, right? So the sky's the limit because we can identify different things, but keeping those skills strong and really supporting kids that need the math.
And if it's in the summer, it really helps to have it during the day, not after.
Yes, correct, yeah. Mhm.
That's how it's gonna work.
So my third goal is aligned to community and increasing opportunities. I've talked and you've heard a lot about, I'm gonna go right over to column G first. We have a really strong Learn to Love program at Somerset Elementary School. They're so successful. And since 2023, we decided in conjunction with them that we wanted to do something school-wide. So for those years, we've done the sandwich project where we've made over 500 sandwiches in a day for the Somerset Food Pantry. So it's been greatly successful. You also heard last time, our second graders have a really great partnership with the residents at Deerfield. They just went last Friday and played bingo. They really have a great friendship with Deerfield. And we have a really strong career fair in place that had several community members coming in, and every student participates in that. But where I'd like to see us move differently is I'd like us to have every grade level, every student have an experience that's more personalized, almost kind of a passion project per grade level, instead of it being, well, everybody's making sandwiches or everybody's got a relationship with Deerfield. How might we make it individualized by the level of the student and the passions and the ideas and the things that students are interested in? So my cycle 1 would be to work with the grade level teams to start talking about what are they interested in, what are some things. I don't want us to be held back by funding or things, so I think I would like to try to work with our parent group and see if there's funds of it needed, how might we go to them and work together. Collaborating at each grade level to find out what they're interested in, what does our community need. And then finally, participating in that community project, and then over the summer, reviewing what we've done, making plans for the following year, what worked, what went really well, but really having that goal that 100% of the kids have an experience that they were a part of planning and implementing and really excited about. Questions about that? Thank you.
And we'll jump to the middle school tab, please. So goal 1 at the middle school is directly connected to English language arts. Pillar 1, that's student peace and how they're building their personalized learning. Our long-term vision, based on the performing comp stuff that Dr. Gramble referenced before, is that 70% of our students will demonstrate proficiency in English language arts as measured by that board exam, which would put us in the 90th percentile. Again, that's a long-term picture that's out there. Currently, based on our 23-24 state data, we are at 59%. So we have a ways to go to get where we want to be. And when we did the math, as was explained before, our target for this year is to hit 65. To push our kids to that place would move us to the 83rd percentile. The one thing that's really interesting when you start looking at the quartiles, especially with the middle school data, at least I thought it was, being a little bit of a numbers geek once in a while, is sometimes those quartiles are really bunched, and it jumps a lot from quartile 2 to 1 because there's a little bit of drop off. So we can make some movement and really move by moving above where we are, and we can jump to almost in that top with some really solid work. It's not easy, but it's definitely out there when you look at the difference in numbers and where we want to go. We're going to, in our 90-day plan, use some strategies similar to what we did last year. We had some really good success last year that we'll learn more about in the future specifically. And so as a leadership team, we decided to build on those things. And so we've already begun in our first cycle of identifying things that we currently do that we think are meeting this ELA goal, specifically around craft and structure. And so part of the thing with working with staff was some staff might say, I don't know what craft and structure is, right? And so as we were building that, because that was one of our pieces that's in our data that is an area where we can improve on, led to part of cycle 2. So 2 and 1 really, I would say, are combined a little bit because we had to create a resource so people knew what that meant. And so we were able to use Action AI tool, and we were able to pull up data and examples. So if I'm an art teacher, I'm a music teacher, I'm a math teacher, we found specific things that I could say, hey, I am kind of doing some of that already. What does craft and structure look like in my content area? Because if I'm not an ELA person, I might not understand the depth of that. And so 1 and 2, cycles 1 and 2 kind of get combined here a little bit as we're getting off and going in our 90-day plan to give people resources so they can begin to explore where can I go, what I'm already doing, how can I improve on what I'm doing. From there, we'll build on some professional development internally. Pam referred to it as Circle the Sage. Last year, we literally called it show and tell. And it was different rooms where if I was an expert on something that I felt was going really good in my room, and Trent was, and Rod was, people moved through those areas and had some really great professional discussions about here's how I'm doing this in my room, and it generated how this could also look like in your room, or you gave me some feedback and we worked together, and it was a really powerful thing that I think helped move our students in a positive direction, and I think also connected our staff across the building too, with a common goal. And so that's where cycle 3 will lead into, and then after we do that, implementations at full go, where people are trying new things, they're tweaking things, getting feedback, reflecting on that, and we gather all that data at the end, which will lead to, as we head into the summer, reflecting on our practices, what worked, what was okay, what didn't, and how are we going to adjust our planning to use resources moving forward, so we not only keep going with what we did well, how we keep that going and improve it even more. It is the general process there to try to reach that long-term goal as we work to it there in ELA. Questions about ELA? Math, and our 90-day plan we developed, we do have 2 goals in our middle school reflected here. So Dave was talking about a little bit, so we're one of the only definitely has 2 that are built to our 90-day plan. The comp data there, 77% of our students at their long-term spot we want to get to would demonstrate proficiency in math, which gets us to the 91st percentile. Again, a great place that we want to get to. Currently, based on 23-24 data, you can see we're at 63% are at that place, so we do the math. Our sweet spot we want to try to get to yet this year is 72. That's one of those when you see how that is kind of close to the long term, that's when those quartiles are kind of grouped here in math, if you dig the data there. The process is really similar. It's actually the same. And then one thing we decided in our building as a leadership group, and we brought it to staff, is as we're doing this together, some people are choosing, hey, I think the ELA thing really fits me better, or I think the math piece, which is specifically statistical analysis, fits me better. And so we are dividing and conquering two goals in the building. Some people are choosing to take on both because they believe that it fits what they do in their classroom, and they have, once they got some of the resource information, hey, I think I can make this work and try to push both. Especially with statistical analysis. For example, this was one where, for example, in physical education, kids tracking their performance, their improvements, and doing some data work there, which we don't typically do, is a really good way to dive that goal into outside the core areas. And like Pam mentioned, using things that kids enjoy and build some math into it is a big part of what some people are jumping on here together. Additionally, with this, we are doing a peer observation once per trimester, building on some of our practices we developed last year with the intent to get people out and explore across the building, see what people are doing that they are doing well, how can I apply that to my classroom, and also give people feedback to what they see. One thing that we started to talk a little bit as our PLC leadership group is this could grow into, especially in cycle 2 and 3 of our 90-day plan, where if I'm a math goal person and Rod's a math goal person, I intentionally go observe a math goal person and look for something in that area. So creating that focus for the reason to go out and see each other at work is part of that as well, with that math piece there. Questions about math? Okay. Goal number 3. I'm excited with the first two, but I'm really excited with the last one. And this is getting our community more connected to middle schoolers, because if you go out in the community, any community, and you tell them you work with middle schoolers, they look at you weird sometimes. All right? It's an acquired taste. It's an acquired taste. All right? And so one of the things that we already have, if you look at our long-term goal there, is that as a school, we're going to facilitate at least one opportunity for the involvement at each grade level, so all 4 grade levels. Building on kind of the concept Pam also introduced, that every grade level has an opportunity where they are directly connected to our community as a starting point. Currently, with our baseline, we currently, as of last year, because this is not connected to testing data, we facilitate 11 different community involvement opportunities. A lot of those last year revolved around our family consumer science program, where our kids did a lot of financial literacy things. They went in our community, we went to the bank, we went to the grocery store, had a went out, planned what they were going to buy, most economically to make what they're going to make, things like that. Along with, we also have had for a few years now, community members come in and our 8th graders experience an interview process. It's very scripted, it's very low key, it's very introduction to it, but just that process. And so those are connections we currently have directly with our community. One that we began already here, so I'm kind of jumping to our cycle stuff here a little bit, is we had a good thing going before COVID showed up, where we were starting to get out in our community, and our kids, through our tech ed classes, were visiting different local businesses and seeing what jobs are out in our community in things that may or may not require extended schooling. And we had, through the chamber, a really good thing going, and when all that happened, people didn't want people coming to businesses for a while, and so we got that kicked off this year through cycle 1, communicating with our chamber to gauge interest, if they were willing to host and have us come out and about. And we're doing that through our 8th grade tech ed groups. And so every 6 weeks, that group changes. And so 6 different groups throughout this year will go out in our community and they'll visit a business to learn about what they do, what are the types of jobs that are in this business, and how it's connected to Somerset in some way. We already are past our first HEX, our first 6 weeks. We went and visited Preco and saw all the awesome stuff they do there. Kids were amazed at the laser stuff, right? They do some really awesome things in that building, and learned about the different types of jobs and things that you may want to explore if that's somewhere you want to go, which builds on career fair at the elementary, and then also I believe firmly starts to create that foundation of some of the choices they'll eventually take when they're in high school, if that's the route they want to go. We have HEX 2 lined up, because that'll be coming up in a couple of weeks where we end. We're going to go out and visit. We connected with Woodstock Builders. We're going to go to a job site and learn all about what that means in the process there, and see a little bit of stuff in action. And so that's part of our cycle pieces there. We brainstormed some businesses that we had either used before or thought would be a possibility that might connect kids to a variety of things they might want to do. In the cycles 3, in 4, we're gonna get some feedback from students. And I think it's valuable to get a little bit of time away from their experience to see what they really take away from the experience, because we can build on that and continue this relationship with our community or chamber and work with them to brainstorm, hey, here's what the kids felt like they got out of it. When we come out again, here's some things they're maybe looking for a little bit, and how can we tweak and make this work better for both of us. And so trying to build that up bigger than it was before and get it at all 4 levels in some way. So, questions about that one?
That's great. I mean, the kids can, they can start dreaming, getting a vision, thinking about their future. That's going to keep them on track in school. They're going to be motivated to do well in school. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I love that. I had an 8th grader, and she actually came home and talked about the mock interview thing. She's now a public speaker, so that was awesome.
All right, you're up.
All right, so just like the other 2 buildings, we have an ELA goal where we kick things off. But before I dive into that, one thing that you'll see kind of here, and then as our report card comes out next month, our achievements in a good space, our overall achievement in ELA and math. That's something we've done fairly well, and that's going to be a continued focus for us. However, we're really going to be emphasizing our student growth. Our growth didn't quite hit where we wanted to last year, but we're maybe hoping to. And we believe that with these long-term vision goals, that we're going to be able to address that even more. Specifically with ELA, last year focusing so much on reading, bringing in the English component to the overall ELA piece, we think will really help us address that moving forward, and moving kids into the proficiency with their meeting and advanced categories. So our long-term vision goal for ELA would be to have 61% of our students at meeting and advanced in ELA as measured on the pre-ACT in grades 9 and 10, or ACT in grade 11. That would put us in the 85th percentile throughout the state. That put us in the upper quartile of the high-performing comps and the 85th percentile in the state. Our baseline for 23-24 data, where we'd be starting at, is 54.6 meeting and advanced. And then our target goal for the end of this year is for 58% of our students in grades 9 through 11 to be meeting or advanced in ELA. So again, not just looking at their reading score, not just looking at their English score, looking at the overall ELA score for them. How we plan to get there in cycle 1, it really is about our instructional consistency. In the past, you had heard me talk about progress learning as our way to do our benchmark assessment for our kids. In previous years, we used FastBridge, A reading and A math. What we found with that is that didn't necessarily align real well to the pre-ACT or ACT to give us good actionable data for our teachers and for our students to get a true measure of where they were at. With progress learning, that is all aligned to the pre-ACT and ACT. So when we did that in September, the kids got their scores right away. Teachers got those scores and data right away, so that they can make adjustments with that. Over the last month here, kids in grades 9 through 11 have been having conversations with their advisory teachers to find out where they were on that benchmark data and see how that measures up against the benchmarks. They got a physical copy of those scores to take home. I can't imagine all those scores made it home, so we put in our newsletter last month that if they didn't make it home, parents just need to contact the office and we can send those to parents so they can get that information for them. Big thing that we want to be able to do is support consistency across different areas within our building, and one of that ways that we want to do that, we believe would help address this with ELA, is developing common writing rubrics for our staff. So identifying that as a basis first to have something to go off of, and then that work will continue throughout the year to have consistency across different grade levels. We had a grade level meeting a few weeks into school, and one of our teachers told the rest of the grade level, hey, you can expect kids to give you more than a one-word answer if you're having them write. Like, it's okay to push them in the other subject areas as well. So that's been a focus for us. Building off the progress learning benchmark, we've been adjusting our intervention groups for interventions and extensions with that, and then calibrating within our PLCs on our grading expectations and proficiency. So if Amanda's a teacher in English and I'm a teacher in English, we're looking at different assessments to have a common understanding of what our level of proficiency is. So expectations don't differ when they go into her room versus my room. We can be pushing kids at the same level. Cycle 2, that's where we really try to extend into our interdisciplinary support. So with this, we're wanting to build on, we have a really good partnership right now with our CIS history and our AP Lane classes, where they really support English and social studies and that writing component together. We want to extend that into other classes where it makes sense. So we're starting to see some of that trickle out, and we're going to continue to push that, because again, we think that that will just help our kids' skills overall. And then prioritize alignment on our assessments with the core resource and our standards, making sure we're giving them the rigor that we need to be with that. And then our mid-year assessment for progress learning, we do a mid-year check-in on that so we can measure their growth throughout the year. Moving into cycle 3, that's where we're truly monitoring and adjusting our kids as we then gear up for state assessment season with that. So providing professional learning opportunities for our staff. You've heard Joe and Pam talk about that. That's something we want to tap into at the high school, where our people can see good examples and learn from each other and provide feedback to each other on what they're doing. Obviously, we're in classrooms doing observations, doing feedbacks, and things like that, but as peers, we can also push each other as colleagues as well. Adjusting our intervention and extension groups leading up to the state assessments to make sure that we're hitting it on all cylinders, and then doing something that we call as a spiral review. So as we're hitting March and April into state assessments, revisiting things that we hit in maybe September, October, November, or if I'm a 10th grader, things they would have hit in 9th grade, so they can shake the cobwebs off and be ready for it. So it's not just, well, I learned about it in 9th grade in September and I forget about it then one time. We're revisiting some of those things. Then in the summer, we're reviewing the data and identifying our next steps. So that's looking at the data. You heard Sarah talk about it, how we have the data during the school year. We actually at the high school, because of when we take the pre-ACT and ACT, we usually have that sooner than the Wisconsin Forward data, so we will have that by the end of the school year typically. So it's looking at that data for 2 reasons. One, the students who are returning next year, so the 9th and 10th graders, when they move up a grade level, that we can start planning and adjusting for them as individuals and as a grade level. But then overall in our courses, what things do we need to be looking at the specific grade levels? Looking at our current practices, what's working well, what do we need to keep doing and keep building on? And then what things do we need to look at ditching or adjusting? And then finally, this is something I think we need to really tap into, is our 9th graders that are coming into the building, looking at where they were at in the Wisconsin Forward. Previously, we've really just focused on that practice assessment that we do in the fall as their first benchmark, which is important, but really tap into those skills so we're not maybe wasting time on things in the fall that we don't need to because they've already demonstrated mastery on, or hey, they really struggle on this, so we need to give them extra support. Any questions on ELA? Or math here? So math, our long-term vision goal here would be 64% of our students would be meeting or advancing advanced in math. It's measured on the pre-ACT and ACT and grades 9 through 11. That put us in the 87th percentile throughout the state. Our baseline is 58.1% meeting and advanced. So then our target for 25-26 would be 61% of our students in math, meeting or advanced. For us with this one, in cycle one thing that we have to note about math is we're in the process of building a newer team still. We've got 2 teachers that just finished their first year at Somerset High School, 1 teacher who's in their first year this year, and another teacher who's still relatively new to teaching and education. So we have a pretty young team to Somerset High School. So really, when we've done work in the district in our math department at the middle school and the high school with building thinking classrooms, so much of that work happened when 3/4 of our department wasn't even there yet. So for us, it's educating them, bringing them on board, and establishing what are our non-negotiables when we talk about building thinking classrooms and what that looks like in the classrooms. So it's being very specific for them, outlining what our expectations are. One key part to that is we've already arranged for them to see what successful building thinking classrooms looks like in action. We were able to identify a person that we felt like was very strong in what they were doing with that, and then our team has been able to see that actually in action. It's one thing for us to talk about it or bring in a speaker or a coach to talk about them, but it's another thing to go see it then in action. And then, as you'll see in cycle 2, we'll conduct our walkthroughs or our observations with specific look-throughs or look-fors and feedback tailored to that then. And then one other thing that I would add there is that I'm personally engaging in co-planning with some of our math team to look for alignment throughout the courses to make sure that we're hitting specific standards, that we're seeing consistency across the different offerings as well with that. Into cycle 2, I already talked about the observations, but again, really prioritizing our assessments on our core resource and our standards, and then our mid-year check-in, similar to what we did with ELA. And then in cycle 3, very similar to ELA, where we're providing continued professional learning opportunities for our people to see people that have been successful, learn from each other, and sometimes that's not necessarily learning from a math teacher. Sometimes if it is with math-related concepts, but if it's a classroom management thing or a learning environment thing, they may be able to learn from someone outside of the math area as well. Adjusting our intervention extension groups, and then that spiral review, and that's something we're really trying to focus on throughout the year with that group. And then the reviewing the data and identifying next steps over the summer is identical to ELA. Looking at where we ended the year, what do we need to keep doing, what do we need to either ditch or adjust, and then where are kids coming to us in 9th grade so we can adjust that. Any questions on math?
So this has been a struggle for us for a while. It seems we've been our lower performing.
Have been.
It seems like, so you have an increase this year, you say you have a pretty new team. Is that a realistic goal for this year with the, do you need anything else from us or needs to grow that math team, or, I mean, what are, with a
Honestly,
group like that?
consistency is huge, right? One of the biggest things that we're looking for is that we're doing things the way that we are intending for them to use with the resource, with fidelity, with the practices, all the professional development that we've been able to pump into that department. I think that's some of the biggest support that we've been able to receive with that recently, and to be able to continue to do those things is gonna be some of the best thing for us with that, in my opinion.
And the building thinking classrooms is a really solid framework for creating environments where kids can really engage in thinking like mathematicians. So the work that they've got planned this year to revitalize that will be fantastic. We have a new math teacher at the high school that had some experience in building thinking classrooms that's also gonna help us revitalize that. So support in professional learning opportunities, that would be an example of something. When we have those, we'll always bring those to you. That would be something to be important. I'll just put it out there long-term, as enrollment increases, if we get to the point of adding a new position, my recommendation would be an instructional coach. I think we need some more support there, very targeted. Sarah and I have talked about that too, where we could say, okay, if we're gonna put an instructional coach position, maybe it's a 0.5 FTE, very targeted. If our focus is high school math, get all that support to that high school math teacher, or my high school math team, until we get those results we're looking for, and then move that resource in a very strategic way to the next area, wherever that focus area is, as opposed to just sort of a blanketed support structure. So you may be hearing about that in the future.
And then any other questions on that? And then our third goal really focuses on student involvement, student engagement, and connectedness. Our long-term goal would be 90% of the students would be involved in at least one school program. That could be athletics, activities, clubs, something connected to the school outside of the school day. Our baseline, we have just under 80% involved currently, and then our target for the end of this year would be 85%. Step one for us in cycle one is to identify kids who are not currently involved in something. Step two with that in cycle two, it's to try to identify the why. What barriers are there? What opportunities could exist that maybe would get kids engaged? Are there passion areas or skills that they have that, okay, we might have something already in place, but it's just getting them connected to the right team and program. I'm gonna use the example of football. We had kids that were drone aviators for the last 4 years, and Joe had said that they are gonna set the record for community service hours in the Somerset High School history based on all the practices, games, and everything that they've been at for filming. Those kids are a part of the football team and a part of the football program. They don't put a helmet on, shoulder pads on a Friday night, but they are connected to something and they are involved at a high level and take great pride in being a part of something. So that could be one way. It also may be, what adjustments do we need to make to our current programs, or things could we bring on board that could be new potentially to help get kids engaged as well. And then in cycle three, it's developing that plan for potential actions for the future to pilot and bring on, and then implement them or expand them over the summer. Questions?
Yeah, I mean, I really like what Joe's doing here at the middle school with involving students with businesses and getting them. What kind of plans do we have at the high school?
Yeah, we have a really, I would say, robust academic and career planning team that has a lot of really good things going and active right now. We felt when we were developing our goals, looking at this one, this had been a goal for a while, we wanted to make sure we get our kids connected in things beyond the school day. But in terms of like those connections with the college and career readiness aspects, a couple things that come to example, just right off the top of my head. Last week we had our first round of career speakers in, where we had, I think it was 8 different people, either in person or virtually, to speak to our kids. Our 10th and 11th graders that was for. One thing that we'll be doing when we have our state assessments this year, so the 9th graders, when they take the pre-ACT Secure, 10th graders will be going and doing some sort of visit either to a college or a technical school to see different pathways and opportunities there. When the 10th graders are doing their state assessment day, 9th graders go, and then when 11th grade has theirs, 9th and 10th grade go to different places as well. So there's a couple of examples off the top right now.
Yeah, I mean, I just see the value in
100%.
going up site to different businesses,
Yes.
getting that exposure. And
Yes. Yeah,
I think it really help.
I agree, yeah.
Thank you.
It's kind of an out-of-the-box question. I've been saving it till the end, all three were done, but I'm curious if there's any thought about how we're evaluating how phones affect students' learning. That's such a new thing. We see it as parents. And I can only imagine how you guys are trying to adjust to it. That seems directly related to this, so anyone want to speak to that?
Well, Wisconsin just passed a law about it.
Yeah. So
That's great. What are we doing about it?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of conversations about that. And it's, so right now with that law, we are compliant already with that law. The next question is, what are our next steps? So right now, at the high school, during instructional time, phones aren't allowed. They can have them during the non-instructional times. That's sort of the variable. What do we do about that? Is that something we're willing to take on? At the middle school, phones aren't out at all. So that, I think, ultimately, we need to explore, do we go 4K-12? Hopefully we don't have 4K students coming with their phones, but you never know. But do we go all the way from JK through 12 phone free? That is a big community-wide initiative, because there will be pushback for sure, but you've described it well. It impacts learning, it impacts the learning environment. There's all sorts of stuff that happens when kids are connected to the phone. If you walk through the high school, you'll notice it like early in the morning, and this isn't something that's unique to Somerset. It happens everywhere. I think we're very typical in this response. If you look at the classrooms, you're not gonna see phones. Kids are engaged, they're doing their thing. But it shuts down in the common areas, because like if you walk in the mornings and see a lot of kids, their faces are buried in the phones. That's a time they can be engaging with one another, engaging with other adults. So certainly something that we want to talk about. And I think honestly, this is a good board conversation, because we talk about support. We wouldn't, if we're going to go down that road, we're going to need your support, because it's a big deal.
And they're finding that it's having a large impact on speech and language development in our little list kids. We have way more kids statistically who are in speech and language, because they're not learning how to say words properly, because their parents are looking down at a phone and the kid can't see their face and how they're speaking.
I'm all on board. I'm the phone Nazi at home. I just, I predicted 10 years we'll look back and go, what the heck were we thinking? So.
Yep, yeah, it's certainly happening already. I think that big question, there was a book that was published a few years ago already, The Anxious Generation, and it's all about phone use, and it's really got a lot of conversations happening in schools about exactly that. Like in I think it was 2008 when the iPhone came out, and the entire conversation was dominated with how impactful this learning tool will be when it becomes ubiquitous. And certainly it does. There are, and not to say that there aren't advantages of having a microcomputer in your pocket at the right time for the right purposes. So, yep, more on that in the future for sure.
Right, and I'm all for the whatever research and information is available, but it just feels like the kind of thing where it's always gonna, if we wait for the research, we'll be behind. Like,
Yeah.
It seems like the kind of thing that has to be community driven if it's gonna be successful.
Agreed. All right, so we'll move on to the district level goals now. We're in the home stretch, so thank you. The work that this team has done has been remarkable, because this was a big ask. When we started looking at a new format to gather this information, part of it was we knew the process was going to be important. So we spent a lot of time back there in A121, the room back there, together working on this, learning from one another. Everyone at the table spent a lot of time on their own putting this together, and then a lot of one-on-one conversations too, to make sure that the connections were strong and that there was alignment. So typically, this tab that we're going through now would be where we'd start the conversation. What are the district level goals? You'll notice that it says board/district level goals. We'll bring this back for approval at the action meeting coming up. My hope is that we adopt these goals as our district level goals. They're your goals, they're my goals. You hired me to achieve these goals, you hold me accountable to these goals. They are our goals. If we want another level of something the board is gonna focus on, like board commitments, great. But one set of goals, this is what we set out to accomplish. Now, that's a big ask for you as well, because we're bringing it to you now in November, and we haven't had a lot of conversation up front. That will change as we have this whole year. The beauty of this plan is it maps out our year. You can see exactly what we'll be working on at what time, what our the big buckets, what we'll be focused on. As we're doing that, when we get to like spring, we'll be talking about next year, starting to develop those plans, and we'll be able to keep you more informed on what our thinking is as we develop those goals. So with that, we'll dig in. This is structured slightly differently in that we pulled one goal per pillar. So we have a student goal, staff goal, an operations, and a families and community goal. Some of them are almost direct replicas of what you've already heard at the department level. Two of them are, I'd say, more specific just to this tab. They don't really exist in the others. So first one is students. I'm not going to spend a ton of time going on this, even though it's the most important goal, because it is what Sarah already presented. It's just combined. It's taking our ELA and our math, combining that into one goal, having a long-term goal to be at the 90th percentile in achievement. I want to pause there because we throw that number out a lot, but I want to just pause and talk about how significant that is. Our goal is to be in the upper 10% in the state in terms of achievement. That's a lofty goal. The beauty is the work that's already happened has us within striking distance. It's not that far off. There's a history here of high achievement. We want to continue that and then bring it to the next level. The details in there are essentially what you've already heard, so I'm not going to go into great detail there. When we go to the next one, this is a staff goal. This one is not necessarily represented directly in the other goals. You'll notice that it says X% because we do not have a baseline. The goal will be to establish a baseline. We do survey staff on engagement, but that survey happens at the school level. We'll be combining this and having a district level staff survey too to measure engagement. We talk about recruitment, retention, and engagement. The priority for me is retention as the #1 measure. We know if we do good work holding on to our people, that will bring other people in. That's where you have to start. Trying to reach about how we bring other people in is an afterthought. We have to start by taking really good care of the folks we have. So that plan, a little bit different. First is, how are we going to identify things that already work that engage staff? A really good example, at the last professional learning day, we had WEA Trust come in to help folks with retirement planning. It's not something that people spend a lot of time learning about, but dedicating a little bit of time saying, hey, you know what? This is a great career. One of my, it's a pet peeve, but also a celebration on the other side. I love it when you hear a great teacher talk to a student about, you know what, you should think about going into teaching because it's a great career, and it really is. This is an example of how we can engage staff and help them understand one of the benefits of choosing a career in education. Wellness is another area that we'll be focusing on, both student and staff wellness, making sure that we have initiatives in place that are aligned to their actual needs. That's the Cycle 2 action. Cycle 3, we've talked about this as well. Rod, Rochelle, and I will be doing listening sessions with each employment group in the spring to hear about what they are interested in terms of their engagement, but also specifically their compensation. And compensation, not just hourly wage or salary, also the total compensation. What are the other elements that are important to you? Whether we're talking about healthcare benefits, retirement benefits, what are the things that mean the most to them? And then evaluate that information and put that in a plan. I want to pause there just for a second because those are both examples of things that we've talked about before. In this plan, you will see several examples of things we've had conversations about at this table. Plug them into this plan so they're strategically aligned and they're not just an afterthought. So a couple of them, we've talked about the high-performing comps. Now you can see how we put those in action. We have the clearly articulated curriculum improvement process. We've talked about that. Sarah's doing great work on building that. That there's a theme there of consistency, clarity, and then connections. You'll see that all through these goals. That's something we've identified as a need. We do really good things in this district. There's some fantastic things happening. The one thing that we've identified that we need to ramp up is delivering programs the way they were intended to be delivered. We have a tendency, we are not alone, this is very common, to implement really strong year one, and then over a couple of years it fades, and then in a couple of years we look at what we're doing and it's not really what was intended up front. That's a lot of this plan is built around those ideas. We have the revised wellness. We've had conversations about making sure our wellness plan is not just staff but student focused. The parent engagement, trust, and transparency. Danny, Lori, and I will be working on that project that we've talked about with highlighting opportunities parents have to be highly engaged and make choices on their child's education. That's embedded in this plan as well. And then the long-term facility plan is something, and you can see that's a big part of the overall plan. So all of that lives here. Some of that lived in those first two goals that we've just talked about. Going on to operations, this one again, not going to go into great detail. Rod talked about this already, but it's about having that long-term facility plan. There's two sides of that. There's the maintenance side, but there's also the master planning. In the perfect world, we're going to see that we're going to turn our enrollment issue around. We'll start to see enrollment grow. As that happens, we need to learn how do we grow smart? As our students come in and we see enrollment grow, how do we make sure that we're growing smart? Implementing programs that meet the needs of our students, but also taking care of facilities. And if we really grew, then talking about what are the next steps for facilities. That's all part of the work we'll be doing, that long-term plan. Rod's already laid that out. The fourth one really is a new goal that hasn't been necessarily talked about directly. This is about communities and families. There's a question on the survey that goes out to communities and families. I think it was sort of the quintessential question that encapsulated a lot of what we've talked about. The question is about families believing that staff members work hard to build a trusting relationship with them. That's the question that's going to drive this goal. I believe we have a staff, we have a leadership team, we have teachers and support staff that do amazing work building trust. We want to make sure that we're highlighting that, we want to make sure it's crystal clear, and we want to make sure that we're not leaving any opportunity unpresented or unexplored. There's a lot we can do to make sure people understand the work we're doing. We talked about clarity. It doesn't matter how good the work that happens behind the doors in our schools is to families if they don't know it. And it also doesn't do us a lot of good if we have some pockets of excellence, but we're not bringing that to scale across the whole system. That's what this goal is about. First key action is on Social Schools for EDU. That is celebrating and telling our story. We know great things happen. We need to do a really good job of telling our story. If we don't tell it, someone else will. And when someone else tells our story, often what's going to happen is they're going to have one experience, and that's going to become the entire story. So we need to make sure that story is out there. Key 2 is revitalizing the leadership cohort. Previously, the leadership cohort was put in place. It was very well received. We want to bring that back, put that in place. Next steps for it will be offshoots. So we have the overall leadership cohort, but we're also going to then look at what are other specific ways we can engage families in meaningful ways. One we know will be on curriculum and instruction, but there'll be other opportunities to deeply engage families in their areas that they're most focused on. And then also, it's about being plugged into the community. So Economic Development Council, Chamber of Commerce are 2 examples of organizations that will be directly involved in to make sure that the connections with the community, it's not just families, but it's also the broader community and the business community. That's cycle 2. Cycle 3, that's the work I alluded to with Danny and Lori and myself, where we'll define and publish a set of parent engagement and voice opportunities, crystal clear, where they have that opportunity to have their voice heard. And then summer planning, focusing on analyzing those survey results and developing next steps. We're currently at 63.6% of responding parents believing that staff members work hard to build a trusting relationship, goal of 72% by the end of the year. So those are the 4 district goals. Again, bring those back next time. And if you have questions in the meantime, certainly ask. Ultimately, I'd want that when there's board action, what I'd ask for is that you're approving essentially that tab, the board and district level goals that you hold me accountable for, and the rest all cascades from there. So questions on the high level goals?
I think it's incredible. I love everything, and you guys have done, all of you, really great work. I appreciate it.
The team's done great work.
Totally agree. I mean, we're talking about specific measurable goals, and that's what's gonna drive enrollment eventually. Because then we talk about clarity, it gives clarity to the public. It's just a winning vision, so appreciate it.
All right. Okay, and then like you said, if you had any questions about any of this as you review it, just keep passing it along to any of the building admin or Dr. Gramble.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, next item, Performing Arts Center usage for the community.
Yeah, this is a quick one. So it's so exciting to have an operational, open performing arts center. Middle school's working on their play. There's a lot of exciting stuff already happening in that space. But we don't wanna lose sight of the fact that it's a community resource as well, so we wanna open it up for community use, but we wanna do that strategically and slowly, because there's a lot to manage. Just like using the theatrical, technology in there is a big deal. But we do wanna open it up. So in the next couple of months, we'll be bringing to you a facility fee schedule that includes use, so people can check out the auditorium. We did have a community organization reach out and inquire about use on a very regular basis. It would be a low-level lift for us to open it up to this organization. They wouldn't require a lot of us, so I want to get this on board, because if we can have a regular renter in that space, that's great. Generating some revenue, opening that resource up is definitely our goal. Long-term, we love to generate enough revenue from our facility use to have some FTE carved out for community education. We can do a lot for the community. We do a great job of educating our students. There's a lot we can offer to the entire community, all age groups. So, but that requires an investment. The goal would be to use that, that income from the Performing Arts Center to start to fund that, so we can really get it open for everyone. I'm not gonna talk specifically about that group, because they just proposed a general idea. When I have specifics and an actual request, we'll bring that to the board.
Okay. Look forward to that. Next time, Neola policy update. I think is this you again, or is this just?
Yeah,
showing that
yeah,
it's
I can talk through this. Actually,
Policies and
Alicia has done most of the work on this one. So this was the district organization. In the existing Neola policy, there was the org chart. It was kind of hard to read, and we received some advice that perhaps we shouldn't have the org chart directly in there. We have a recommendation that we think will kind of meet a happy medium and serve the needs of the community and also the flexibility we need. If we have the whole org chart in that policy, every time something changes, we have to bring the policy back for approval. What we're looking at right now with Ed from Neola is linking the org chart. Alicia put together a beautiful org chart. One of the things that was brought up, it didn't have the board on the org chart. It does now. So it starts with the board, and then it goes to the superintendent, and then it breaks out from there. So that has been corrected, that the board is represented in that. We'll link that. Thanks for coming. See ya. He sat through a lot. That was hope he earns a badge for that. So the policy has not changed. It's just a technical correction, but we're hoping then to link in that visual full graph. So if someone's in the policy, they can just click and see this is the org chart. But if we change that org chart, it'll change in the handbook and the policy with one click, essentially. So that's all that was about.
Okay, thanks for that update. And then your report, any addition?
Referendum invoices are in there, nothing out of the ordinary. We're really getting down to the nitty gritty. You can see one was just a couple $100. WASB State Convention coming up. We have a couple of board members going, still room. If you can make that work and would like to attend end of January, let us know. We'll get everything booked. Alicia's working on getting the rooms booked and everything. It's a great learning opportunity, so looking forward to that. One thing that occurs in that convention is the delegate assembly, where we will appoint a board member, you will appoint a board member to represent the Somerset School Board at the delegate assembly. We don't have the proposed resolutions yet. In early December, we'll get resolutions. Our admin team will provide advice and our recommendations on those resolutions. Sometimes what happens is there could be resolutions that are supported maybe by a contingent of districts that don't have the same interest that we do. So we might have some resolutions that we're not supportive of, and we would let you know that. Ultimately, it's up to you as a board to decide which resolutions you would support. You would appoint a board member to be that delegate representative, and at the delegate assembly, they would cast a vote on behalf of the Somerset School Board. So that's what that's all about. Nothing to worry about right now. Early December is when that would start rolling. That's all I got on that.
All right, item 9, I'll ask for anybody to make a motion to approve some or all of the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the personnel update, the athletics activities personnel update, and the donation as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 6-0. General information, the next meeting will be November 17th with the regular session at 6 and the listening session 30 minutes prior at 5:30. So board members sign up if you're able to attend. And then anyone else who'd like to attend to come ask questions, you are free to speak freely with the board. And then next item, district celebrations. Danny.
Congratulations to all those going to state soccer and cross country, and I hope there's a fan bus that goes along and everybody has a great time.
Steve?
Just basically, I'll just reiterate what I said before. Thanks for all your hard work. I think this is a winning strategy. Our demographics are changing quickly in this town, and we gotta adapt to it, and it looks like we are, and that's just gonna be a winning district, so appreciate that. You got the tough job. You gotta implement it, make it happen.
Yeah, that's all I got too, is, I'm really excited for what I heard tonight. I think it's just, there's meat on the bones, there's commitment, there's just a really great feeling about all of it, super excited, and thank you all for your hard work.
I'll say the same thing. Thank you, everybody. It's a lot of work putting it all together, and we appreciate it.
Bus registration for Ski Club opened up on Monday. There's limited space available on the first bus, so please sign up quickly to ensure your child has transportation to Trollhagen on Wednesdays after school if you're interested in that. And we'll have a second bus only if there's enough interest to support it. We have had a second bus the last 2 years. Thank you to the donor to the activities fund. Every year I am contacted by parents whose child would like to participate in Ski Club. And we've been able to help families with that because of donations such as that one. Thank you to Sarah Stobig. She rolled out the SMSF application to this year's seniors last Wednesday. Parents, please encourage your child to take advantage of the numerous scholarships available through one application with the Somerset Memorial Scholarship Fund. Thank you to the elementary students and families who are able to participate in the Spartans Give Back food drive leading up to the Thanksgiving holiday. The needs in our community are more than ever at this difficult time. Congratulations to the boys soccer team, somebody already said that, and congratulations to Caleb. In addition to coming in 22nd overall, Caleb broke Brandon Langer's 5K record that stood for 30 years. In 1995, Brandon ran a 5K at 16 minutes and 16 seconds. And on October 24th, Caleb ran a 5K in 15 minutes and 53 seconds. So I'm looking forward to 2055.
And that it?
Yeah.
And then I think you said that food drive, that goes through the 20th, right, Pam?
Yes, yes.
So
Mhm, thank
from
you.
now until the 20th, I think if you can bring stuff in every day,
Mhm.
right?
Yep, just bring it to school.
Okay, and then, yeah, and just to add to the staff and their goals that they sent through tonight, just remember that parents, we also have a hand in this goal. We know exactly what they're trying to do. We get all these scores. We should be reviewing them, like they said. If you haven't seen them, you should be reviewing them. You get them at parent-teacher conferences. And then you can also take that, and it says if you've grown, it says your achievement. And we should take that as our own challenge to help our own kids, which helps our district. So it's not, this is their vision, but it's also on every one of us to do our job, then to take what they've given us and make sure our kids are part of that achievement and growth as well. It doesn't just stand during the school day. So I pass that to the parents of this community. be involved with your students' education as much as you can. All right, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.